I sent a dirty clip to a stranger on OnlyFans. My husband subscribed and caught me red-handed. I'm not proud of this. I won't hide behind excuses either. My name doesn't matter here. What matters is the moment my double life cracked open and everything spilled out. One tap on my phone, one video. That was all it took for the person I loved most to see me at my ugliest. It started in the kind of quiet nobody notices. My husband and I had slipped into a polite routine, meals eaten in silence, TV murmuring in the background, two professionals crossing paths more than living together. He's the kind of man who does the right thing even when it costs him. He still stands to shake a stranger's hand. He never once raised his voice to me, even in our worst fights. I used to admire that steadiness. Somewhere along the line, it started to feel like indifference. I didn't go looking for trouble at first. A friend at work joked about how she was making side money selling foot pictures on OnlyFans. I laughed it off, but the seed stuck. It wasn't about money for me. It was about attention. Someone out there would look at me and actually want me, not the version of me who cooked dinner and sent bill reminders. Me, the hidden me. At night, while my husband read reports for work, I scrolled through the site. Thousands of women were on there, some younger, some older, all claiming space in a world that didn't ask them to be polite. I opened an account under a name no one would guess. At first it was harmless, photos of my legs, my lips, nothing my mother would recognize. I told myself it was just flirting with the edge. For the first time in months, I felt alive. Then he appeared. A new subscriber with no profile picture, just a username that sounded like static. His messages were different, not crude, not demanding, compliments, questions about my day, about the books on my nightstand. It was intoxicating. I built a fantasy around a stranger I had never seen. I told myself I was in control. The night everything changed, it was raining hard, the kind of storm that makes the whole house feel like it's breathing. My husband had gone to bed early, worn out from another late meeting. I sat in the guest room with my phone glowing in the dark. The stranger sent a message. "You're beautiful. I can't stop thinking about you. Send me something just for me." I should have closed the app. Instead, I filmed a clip, nothing I hadn't imagined 1,000 times, just more real. I angled the camera so my face didn't show. My hands were shaking, but there was a thrill in it too, like stepping onto a stage. When I hit send, my heart raced so hard I could feel it in my teeth. For a minute there was silence, no response. I locked the phone and stared at the ceiling, listening to the rain and the sound of my husband's steady breathing in the next room. I felt both powerful and filthy. I told myself it was a one-off, a harmless secret that would burn itself out. What I didn't know, what still makes my stomach drop when I think about it, was that the man on the other side of the screen wasn't a stranger at all. 2 nights later, my husband started acting differently. Not angry, not suspicious, just still. He would watch me over his coffee as if memorizing my face. He asked about my day, about my phone, little things he hadn't asked in months. I mistook it for renewed interest. I even felt a small spark of hope. Maybe, I thought, the distance between us was closing. It wasn't. It was the pause before impact. Looking back now, I can see how obvious the trap was. He had noticed the way I turned my phone over when he entered the room, the new password on my lock screen. He's a systems analyst. Catching patterns is literally his job. Instead of confronting me, he created a profile. He subscribed, he tested me, and I failed. I didn't know any of that yet, of course. All I knew was the rush, the secrecy, the fantasy. Each time the anonymous subscriber messaged me, I slipped a little further away from my real life. I started checking the app before brushing my teeth, deleting notifications while my husband showered. In my head, I was 2 people, the loyal wife and the hidden woman. I thought I could keep them separate forever. The last night of my double life began like all the others. He was in his study finishing a report. I was on the couch with my phone. The subscriber asked for another clip. This time he was more specific, more intimate. I hesitated. Then I convinced myself he was just a nameless man who would vanish into the internet. I recorded the clip, hit send, and felt the same electric jolt, guilt braided with desire. Seconds later, my husband walked into the room holding his own phone. He didn't shout. He didn't throw anything. He just set it on the table in front of me. On the screen was my face, frozen mid-frame from the clip I had sent. His voice was calm, almost gentle. How long has this been going on? The world tilted. The two lives I had built collided in one image. I remember the sound of the rain starting again outside, the taste of metal in my mouth. For a heartbeat, I thought about lying, pretending it was stolen or fake. But the look in his eyes, steady, tired, unflinching, told me he already knew every answer. That's the moment this story really begins. The moment the mask slipped and the wife I had pretended to be vanished. Everything that came after, the humiliation, the fallout, the revenge I never saw coming, started with that single clip on a rainy night. I thought the worst part would be the confrontation, but it wasn't. It was the silence that came after, the way he looked at me as if I were a stranger sitting in our living room wearing his wife's face. "Answer me," he said again, still calm. "How long?" "Not long," I whispered, my throat dry. "It was a mistake." He didn't move, didn't blink. He just let the clip play again, the audio low but clear enough to make my skin crawl. "A mistake," he repeated. "One mistake, or a series?" There was no safe way to answer. I reached for his hand. He pulled it back. That tiny gesture cut deeper than any shouted accusation. For years I had thought of him as mild, steady, maybe even passive. Now I could feel the steel under it. He wasn't raising his voice because he didn't need to. He slid his phone back into his pocket and stood. "You've been playing games with a stranger online, only it wasn't a stranger." He let the sentence hang there like a blade. It was me. I stared at him. "What?" "I set up the account." His voice was still level, almost clinical. "I wanted to see what you were hiding, and you showed me." Something in me cracked then. Shame, fury, disbelief. I couldn't tell. "That's insane," I hissed. "You catfished me? You set me up?" "I tested you," he said. "I had to know." The room spun. "So you're the victim and the spy?" I laughed, a brittle sound even to my own ears. "You think that makes you the good guy here?" "I'm not the one sending videos to strangers," he replied quietly. "You are." That should have been the moment I collapsed, begged, confessed. Instead, a strange defiance rose in me. "If you'd been present, if you'd touched me, if you'd acted like a husband—" He cut me off with a sharp gesture. "Don't," he said, and for the first time in years there was real heat in his voice. "Do not try to make this about me. You had a choice. You made it." He walked out of the room then. He didn't storm out or slam any doors. He just left. A minute later, I heard the guest room door click shut. That was the night I finally understood that mild doesn't mean weak. It means controlled. The next morning, he was gone before I woke up. The house smelled of coffee, but there wasn't a cup waiting for me. A folded piece of paper sat on the kitchen counter. "I'll be staying elsewhere for a while. We'll talk when I've decided what comes next." No signature. Just his precise handwriting, each letter like a verdict. For a week, I lived in limbo. He didn't answer my texts. When I called his phone, it went straight to voicemail. I kept going to work, kept making the bed, but everything felt like a stage set after the actors have left. At night, I scrolled through the app out of habit and found my account banned, by him, I guessed. The secret life I had built collapsed overnight, leaving only the wreckage of the real one. People say guilt is heavy. For me, it was sharp, like 1,000 tiny needles under my skin. I drafted apologies, deleted them, drafted again. In some drafts, I took full responsibility. In others, I attacked him for trapping me. I couldn't decide which version of myself was real, the remorseful wife or the cornered animal. Maybe I was both. Then came the public part. One Friday afternoon, a friend from work sent me a text. "You okay? Check your email." Attached was a screenshot of a post, my post. Not literally mine, but a retelling of my secret, posted to a relationship forum. Anonymous, but with enough detail for anyone who knew us to recognize the story. My husband had written it. It wasn't cruel. That was the worst part. It was measured, factual, almost elegant. The kind of post that goes viral because people smell truth in it. He described the distance, the suspicions, the test. He didn't name me, but he didn't have to. Colleagues, mutual friends, even my sister sent me links with wide-eyed emojis. Within hours, the comments numbered in the thousands. Strangers calling me every name they could think of, praising him for his restraint, urging him to leave. I tried to call him. He didn't answer. That night I opened our shared bank account and saw that half the funds had been moved to a separate account under his name. He wasn't just leaving. He was preparing for war. That was when the humiliation hit full force. Not just losing him, but losing the version of myself I had performed for the world. The professional wife, the loyal partner, gone. Now I was a headline on a screen, the villain in a story thousands of people were dissecting over dinner. The irony is that part of me still felt wronged. He set me up, I told myself, pacing the kitchen at 2 a.m. He tricked me. He lured me. But each time I tried to hold on to that anger, it slipped away, because the trap only worked because I stepped into it. A week after the post went viral, he came back to the house. He didn't bring a suitcase. He just walked through each room quietly, as if taking inventory. I followed him like a ghost. Finally, he stopped at the doorway of the guest room, my room now, and said, "You'll get a letter from my lawyer. Please don't contact me directly." I wanted to scream, to claw my way back into his good graces, but his eyes were calm and final. The same steadiness that once felt like safety now felt like a wall I could never climb. He left without another word. That was the last time I saw him in our house. A month later, the movers came for his things. Neighbors watched from their windows as boxes went into the truck. Some waved at him. No one waved at me. I had thought the worst humiliation was the night he caught me. I was wrong. The real humiliation is standing in your own kitchen and realizing you've been outplayed at every turn, not by a cruel man, but by a good one who decided he was done being taken for granted. By the time the truck drove away, the silence in the house felt like a living thing. No keys on the counter, no shoes by the door, just me and the echo of a life I had dismantled with my own hands. And that was only the beginning of my downfall. People imagine the day after a scandal as a dramatic scene, doors slamming, lawyers shouting, cameras flashing. In reality, it's a slow erosion. One by one, the ordinary supports of your life give way until you're standing in an empty frame. Within 2 weeks of the post, my phone stopped buzzing, not because people forgot, but because they had read enough to decide who I was. Friends who had once crowded our kitchen on Friday nights now sent "thinking of you" texts and then faded away. Invitations dried up. Even my own mother, who had always defended me, said over the phone in a flat voice, "I don't know who you are anymore." Work was next. At first I threw myself into it, trying to act unbothered, but whispers followed me down hallways. Someone had printed the post and left it on the staff room table. My manager called me in. "You're a distraction. Take some time off." It wasn't a suspension on paper, but it felt like one. Walking back to my desk under 30 pairs of eyes, I realized my private sin had become public currency. I told myself I still had my dignity. I told myself he'd gone too far, that his revenge was cruel. But every time I tried to hold on to that story, something else chipped away at it. One afternoon I went to the grocery store and caught a stranger staring at me. She had her phone low, recording. "You're the OnlyFans wife, right?" she said. "My sister loves that post." Then she laughed while I pushed past her, leaving my basket right there in the aisle. Nights were the hardest. With no job to distract me, the house turned into a maze of echoes. Sometimes rage came boiling up, and I'd mutter to myself, "He trapped me. He built the account. He lured me." Other times I broke down in sobbing apologies no one could hear. Regret and defiance took turns driving, but neither gave me any relief. The legal papers showed up on a Wednesday. Plain envelope, his handwriting on the return address. Inside was a formal notice of separation, an itemized list of property, and a request for no direct contact. The tone was polite, almost surgical. At the bottom was one final line, "I wish you healing, but I can't be part of it." I read it 3 times, waiting for fury to rise. Instead, I just felt hollow. I had pictured him exploding, maybe throwing things, maybe even forgiving me after a fight. But he hadn't done any of that. He had simply removed himself. Mildness, I realized, can be its own kind of revenge. Not shouting, not pleading, just walking away and letting the world see what you've done. With half the bank account gone and my job on hold, the bills started piling up. The weekend trips I'd put on credit, the subscription to the app, even the secret phone I'd used to send clips, all of it came due at once. My private life now had a paper trail, and I was the one paying for it. The internet made sure the humiliation never faded. Screenshots of my videos, blurred but still recognizable, were circulating in comment threads that picked my marriage apart like a crime scene. Strangers argued about whether I was a villain or a victim. Some called me brave, most called me worse. A few said my husband was a saint for how calmly he had handled me. At 2 a.m, scrolling through those comments, I wondered if they were right. I even tried therapy. In my first session, I spent almost the whole time bouncing between tears and accusations. I said he baited me, that he'd made me the villain. The therapist listened quietly and then said, "He didn't make you send the clip." That truth hit me like a stone dropped into a well. That was my last session. I told myself therapy was a scam, but really, I just couldn't sit in front of a mirror that clear. Meanwhile, he seemed to be thriving, or at least that's what it looked like from what little I saw online. Pictures of him running a charity 5K, smiling with coworkers, a new apartment with wide windows and sunlight pouring in. He never posted about me. He never gloated. He just kept living. That was its own kind of statement. I survived you. 3 months in, I tried one last time to reach him. A handwritten letter, 3 pages long, full of apologies mixed with excuses. I left it in his mailbox. 2 days later, it came back unopened, a red return to sender stamped across it. My own handwriting staring back at me. That was the moment I stopped telling myself there was still a way back. The real downfall wasn't losing him or the job or even the friends. It was losing the story I had told myself for years, that I was the loyal one, the neglected one, the victim. Without that story, there was just me, a woman sitting in an empty house with bills she couldn't pay and a name people whispered for sport. I wish I could say there was some dramatic turning point, a moment of redemption, but there wasn't. It was just a slow unraveling. Each morning I woke up a little less angry and a little more aware of the mess I had made. I deleted the app. I sold the secret phone. I picked up a night shift at a diner just to keep the lights on. The customers there didn't know me. For a while I could be anonymous. Until, of course, someone's phone lit up with my face again. Sometimes serving coffee to strangers, I thought about him. Not the man who caught me, but the man I married. The one who used to rest his hand on my back as he passed. That memory stung worse than any comment online, because it reminded me of what I had thrown away while telling myself I was deprived. And still, a part of me wanted to fight. I wanted to stand up in that diner and shout, "I'm not the monster you think I am. I'm just a person who made a mistake." But another part of me knew it wouldn't matter. Once a story is out in the world, you can't control how it spreads. By the end of that winter, I was living in a rented room above the diner. The dogs were with my sister because I couldn't afford the pet deposit. My closet held 2 uniforms and a coat. The mirror didn't smell of his aftershave anymore. It smelled of bleach from the communal bathroom. I had turned into the kind of cautionary tale I used to scroll past on my phone, shaking my head. And even then, sometimes I still checked the app, just to see if maybe he had messaged me under another name. He hadn't. The silence was complete. I woke up one morning to that silence pressing on me. Not the comfortable kind, but the kind that feels heavy, like something sitting on your chest. His side of the bed was empty. His phone charger was gone. The closet door hung open, the hangers swinging like they'd been yanked through in a rush. I checked my phone. No messages. My stomach twisted, but the first thing I felt wasn't guilt. It was anger. How dare he just leave? How dare he not even ask me why I did it? My head was still full of our last fight, the way he had stared at me, calm but cold, like I was a stranger. He didn't yell. He didn't throw anything. He just looked at me like a judge handing down a sentence. That look scared me more than shouting ever could. I called him, straight to voicemail. My voice cracked as I left a message. "We need to talk, please. This isn't what you think." But even as I said it, I knew it was exactly what he thought. Then the notifications started, pings one after another, lighting up my screen like a cruel slot machine. At first I didn't understand. Then I opened one, a screenshot of my OnlyFans profile. My face blurred, but still recognizable to anyone who knew me. Someone had posted it in a private local group. The caption read, "Married woman selling dirty clips to strangers. Recognize her?" My chest tightened. The comments were already flooding in. Some people blurred my name. Most didn't bother. Friends from high school, distant relatives, people from church, all speculating, judging, gossiping. Some messages were even worse. Men who had subscribed, men who claimed to have my clips, a woman who said she knew my husband and had already sent him everything. I wanted to crawl out of my skin. My first instinct was to fight back. I posted a story claiming it was fake, that someone had stolen my pictures. I told myself if I denied it hard enough, maybe people would believe me. But deep down I knew the trail was too clear. The receipts were too many. My voice in the videos, a tattoo visible in one clip, the same sheets from our bedroom. By afternoon, my job called. My supervisor's voice was tight but not unkind. We've been forwarded some content, and until we can clarify what's going on, you're suspended. Suspended. The word echoed in my head. This was supposed to be extra money, a harmless secret. Now it was eating my life whole. I went to my parents' house, thinking maybe they would comfort me. My mother opened the door and didn't hug me. She had seen the screenshots too. "Why would you do this?" she whispered. I had no answer. My father stayed in the kitchen and didn't look at me. By evening, my husband finally texted me. Just one line. "We'll talk soon. Get a lawyer." That was the moment the bottom really fell out. It wasn't only the marriage I was losing, it was everything. The respect I thought I had in my community, my job, even the little illusion I had built for myself about being in control. I sat on the bathroom floor at my parents' house, staring at this small pink razor in my hand. Not because I wanted to hurt myself, but because I felt like I had already shredded my own life into pieces. I tried to think of ways to explain it. Maybe I was lonely. Maybe he hadn't touched me enough. Maybe it was just a fantasy, just a little money. But every excuse I ran through sounded hollow, even to me. What started as a small rebellion, a way to feel wanted, to feel powerful, had turned into a public execution of my character. That night he came back, not to our house, but to my parents' place. He knocked, calm as ever, and asked to see me. My mother hesitated, but eventually let him in. He didn't sit down. He didn't shout. He just handed me an envelope. Inside were printouts of our bank statements, screenshots of my OnlyFans page, and a petition for divorce. "I'm not here to humiliate you," he said quietly. "You've already done that to yourself, but I'm done." I reached out for him, but he stepped back. "I still care about you," he said, and his voice broke for the first time. "But I can't be with someone who does this and lies about it." I wanted to scream at him, to tell him he didn't understand, that somehow he had pushed me into this. But when I opened my mouth, nothing came out. He left without another word. My mother closed the door behind him and finally started to cry. Later that night, lying on the same childhood bed where I once dreamed about love and safety, I opened my phone. My subscriber count had doubled. People were gossiping, but they were also paying. The money was still flowing in, but it felt dirty now, like blood money. I stared at the little notification bar for a long time. I could delete the account, I could disappear, or I could lean into it and pretend I didn't care, convince myself I was empowered. But every time I pictured my husband's face, that calm sorrow in his eyes, another piece of me collapsed. For the first time since this whole thing began, I felt cornered. It wasn't a game anymore. It wasn't a fantasy. It was the beginning of my downfall, and I had built every brick of it myself. I barely slept after he left. The house was too quiet, my thoughts too loud. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the envelope in his hands and the look on his face. He didn't look at me like a villain or even like a victim. He looked like a man who had already made peace with his decision, and that made me feel powerless in a way I had never felt before. The next morning, my phone buzzed again, only this time it wasn't subscribers, it was journalists. A gossip blog had picked up the story from that local group and published it with my full name. They called me the suburban OnlyFans wife, and used blurred stills from my videos with lurid captions. The comments section was a feeding frenzy. I read until my eyes blurred. Some mocked me, some called me brave, but all of it felt like hands grabbing at me. Not long after, my boss emailed to say the board had voted to terminate my contract. "This has caused reputational damage to the organization," the message said. Just like that, the job I had spent a decade building was gone. I tried to call my husband again, straight to voicemail. I sent him a long message, half apology and half accusation, blaming him for being distant, for not seeing me. He didn't reply. Later, a friend texted me saying she had seen him at a lawyer's office, calm, collected, dressed in a suit. She said he looked like a man who already knew his future. Meanwhile, my subscribers kept climbing. People were asking for exclusive confessions. One man even offered me $10,000 for a face-to-face meeting. That should have felt like power, but it felt more like quicksand. The more I moved, the deeper I sank. I rented a small apartment because I couldn't stand staying at my parents' house any longer. On the first night there, I sat on the bare floor scrolling through old photos, anniversaries, vacations, the house we had painted together. I kept wondering if any of it had been real, or if I had already been drifting away back then, planting the seeds of my own ruin without even knowing it. Then a letter came by courier. It was from his lawyer. Not just divorce papers this time, but a formal notice that he was seeking full control of our joint assets, accusing me of financial misconduct. Attached were screenshots of my OnlyFans earnings matched with transfers from our shared account. And he was right. I had used some of our money to advertise my page. I told myself it was an investment. Now it was evidence. I went to the first hearing alone. He showed up with his lawyer and didn't even glance at me. I tried to catch his eye, to see some trace of the man who used to brush my hair out of my face when I cried. But he sat straight and expressionless, answering the judge's questions in a clear voice. The courtroom felt colder than a morgue. When the judge asked if I had anything to say, I started to explain, but my voice cracked and I stopped. All the words I had rehearsed, about loneliness and empowerment and how he had failed me, just evaporated. For the first time, I couldn't spin a story that made me the heroine. I stood there exposed. The case dragged on, photos leaked, someone spread my private messages across forums. People started recognizing me on the street. Some whispered, others sneered. A few even asked for selfies. I stopped going out during the day. My apartment started to smell like stale takeout and shame. My husband moved on quicker than I thought he would. A mutual friend posted a photo of him at a charity gala, smiling next to a tall woman in a navy dress. He looked healthy, composed, lighter somehow. Seeing that photo felt like being stabbed with a clean blade. There wasn't any anger in him anymore, just absence. One night, drunk and alone, I turned on my camera and recorded a confession video. No makeup, no filters, just me under the harsh kitchen light. I talked for almost an hour about the thrill, the lies, the money, the way I told myself I was untouchable. I even said his name. I said I was sorry. When it finished uploading, the comments poured in. Some were vicious, but some were unexpectedly soft. Strangers telling me they had done things they regretted too. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something close to being seen. That night, for the first time in a long while, I slept without waking up in a panic. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. He got the house, most of the savings, and full custody of the dog we had adopted together. I kept my car and my debts. The day I signed the last paper, I walked out of the courthouse into a drizzle that quickly turned into hard rain. For a moment, I thought of the first night we kissed, years ago, when the rain had felt like a blessing. Now it felt like the sky washing me off. People still subscribe. They still send messages. Sometimes I reply. Sometimes I don't. The money covers my rent, but it no longer feels like power. It feels only like survival. I don't know how long I will keep the account open. Sometimes, late at night, I drive past our old street and park a few houses down. His car is there. Lights are on in the window. I don't get out. I just sit in the dark and watch the rain slide down the windshield, thinking about the woman I used to be and the woman I am now. I still tell myself stories. Some nights I convince myself I was brave, that I refused to live small. Other nights I see it clearly. I gambled with everything and lost. This is my confession, a story I never meant to tell.